Well, I had a development deal at NBC. This is where I came into it. And Michael Whitehorn was one of the people they had set me up to meet. And after meeting him, he enjoyed my, stand-up. He had seen my tapes, and we got together and we kind of hit it off. And he had this idea for this blue-collar delivery type of guy that he thought would be a great, almost a modern-day Honeymooners type show.
And I said, well, this guy is very funny, kind of in a unique way. And I called Tom Noonan, who was head of NBC Productions, and I said, I like Kevin James, and what are you thinking about for him? And he said, I'm thinking like a modern-day Honeymooners. And I said, that sounds right. And it's sort of funny now to think back on that conversation, because here we are 6, 7 years later, and that's pretty much exactly what the whole project is, it's a modern-day Honeymooners.
I loved it, and I said, let's do this. So we pitched it to NBC, where I had the deal. And they essentially wanted to change a lot of the characters, the Arthur character. They wanted to change the Doug character. They wanted to, they thought he was a little too dumb, actually. They wanted to smarten him up a little bit. And
I love you.
I remember one of the pitches was to have him playing chess on the internet with some kid in Europe, and we just didn't know how that fit in at all. And a credit to Michael Whitehorn, he said, no, we're not going to change it, that's it.
And we kept fighting about that. We said, no, this guy really, he's very content with his life. He's got a union job, and he's got a wife that he loves, and he's fine. And Warren kept pushing, no, he wants to be more. And finally, the whole thing kind of died, would have died at NBC, would have been one of many forgotten pilots, but Kevin's deal was expiring in that year, and also CBS liked the script very much, and they were trying to develop something compatible, with Raymond sensibility-wise to go on Monday nights.
And I'd been doing Ray's show. I did a few episodes there and wrote an episode with him there, so they were familiar with my work. And they said, would you like to do it over here? And I said, absolutely. And my contract ran out, and we didn't re-sign. We went over to CBS, and the rest is history.
I mean, I remember telling my agent manager, this is not going to work. This show is not going to work. America's not, this is when reality shows just started, and there were shows like Will and Grace starting that are a little bit more high concept, and this was just about a family, just about a husband and a wife. So I thought, this is never going to work. And then, excuse me, then Kevin and I were so uncomfortable with each other in the beginning. It was like, here we are, we had to play a couple that you've kissed before, and during rehearsals we'd be like, all right, and then we kiss, and then we wouldn't do it.
Thanks again for
so there was that awkward, touching thing, well, non-touching thing. And then when we got picked up, it was like we knew each other for 10 years. What are you doing?
I'm sitting over here today.
Why?
I don't know, I never sit here. It's a new perspective.
Whatever.
I had worked with Leah on they put together a phony pilot, which is what they'll do. They'll assemble actors just to see if an idea is good. And they were doing this at NBC, and they asked if I would read a table read, go through this script, and it was for Tony Danza's company. And he assembled a bunch of actors, and he'd just sit around a table and read it, and just to see if the network would, like the idea. And I remember Leah was at that table read, and I remember I hadn't met her before, and I just saw her there, and I remember how pretty she was, but how funny she was. That was really what, really struck me as, wow, this girl's amazing. She's going to be great.
All right, I admit he's a little out there, but we can't keep canceling on them. I don't think they believe the last excuse you gave them. What was it? That you were stuck in a well?
All right, I choked.
Yeah.
I did.
And in acting with her, which I hadn't done that much acting before, it's not like you're acting. You're in a conversation with her. She's either yelling at you or whatever, and you're just reacting that way, or, I feel so much more comfortable around her.
You could be completely honest with Kevin. You could be mad at him. He could be mad at you. He tells you exactly what he thinks. It's like, after 5 years or 6 years, you can find out that your co-star secretly hated you the whole time. Whereas Kevin will just tell you right to your face, and vice versa. So I really genuinely love about Kevin the fact that he's very open and honest.
I'm acting, you
You
idiot.
weren't acting, I can tell. Go on, right from there.
Bull!
You didn't laugh all week.
Rob, wasn't I laughing earlier today?
She wasn't laughing. There's a difference.
Well, I liked Kevin. We met the first time in a room with some of the CBS executives, and he suddenly laid himself out flat in front of me like, well, you are the god, you are the High Lama of comedy, I love you, I need you, I want you, and he had a nice face.
You know, when we were going through lists of people to bring on, Jerry, you know, we just thought he was unobtainable, and at the time, you know, but he was our first choice by far. He's got everything, because he's got such, you know, character, he's got such great funny timing, and he's got heart. You know, you feel for this guy, and you want, you know.
That's the beginning of anything. You have to kind of like what's going on, and at that time, nothing was going on at that moment. I'd finished Seinfeld, and the party's over, and what was I going to do with my existence at that point? I really didn't want to stay in Hollywood, to be honest. I wanted to go back home and just sit in New York, you know, and maybe do a play or write another book, you know.
I just spoke to him an hour ago, and he said he was just going to spend the rest of the afternoon in his room reading. Isn't that something? Doug?
We laugh so hard when he does yell, but it's also the little moments that he has when he's just talking that just floor us. And me especially, when we've burned more film, you know, ruining takes by me cracking up, trying to look at him and hold it together when he'll do something different every take. And the man, like I said, has so many different levels and different things, and you just don't know where it's coming from. And, you know, he'll just do this stuff on the spot that just knocks me out. I just can't even look at him. I really can't.
There would be no show without Jerry Stiller. He's like our baby on the show. You know, most couples have a baby, or eventually the show evolves into something else, you know. And we have our baby, and that's Jerry. I mean, we take care of him, and I think, you know, we love him. And I think America loves him. You know, he's like the pepper, you know.
I love the character because he's so unabashedly narcissistic and grandiose and paranoid, and yet at the same time you kind of like him. You know, if you knew this guy, you know, with all of his craziness, you would say, he's a kind of a nice guy to be around.
Let me put it this way. Arthur is King Lear, only in Queens. He's looking for Cordelia, his daughter. That's the one person who understands him. But he doesn't have that. Not in Queens, he doesn't. She gives him as much as he can give her. So, having done Shakespeare in the Park with Joe Papp and going through a lot of the Shakespearean stuff, I know that the greatest drama comes from that play, King Lear, who rails at the world because they're not giving him what he deserves, and perhaps he's right.
And on that note, Douglas, there's something that needs to be said.
I'm listening.
You put a nasty little nick in my armoire.
That's what needs to be said?
Okay, you know what? Why don't you come inside, Dad? I'll make you a nice baked apple. Come on.
Well, the man lives in a cellar or basement, and he's really there on the dole. I mean, and he finally has found some place in his life where he can get things, survive the rest of his existence.
I wanted to prove that you were wrong, that I could live on my own.
But you couldn't.
Only because I didn't have the money.
Well, that's a big part of the living on your own package.
Fair enough.
He really is a guy who, I guess the word is, he blackmails his family into keeping him going, you know, and he uses every trick in the book to keep himself alive down there.
Honey?
We're going to have some good times, you and me. Well, first of all, he's an easy mark. He's bigger than me. He's a human dartboard, you know. He's got a little soul, and he's got heart, but he also is a realist. He knows, and I think he really wants to keep having sex with my daughter, you see, and I may have some control over all this in some way. I could ruin that marriage like in 2 seconds by certain things I know about what he does. He knows I'm emotionally blackmailing him every second of the day. And somehow or other, he'll put up with it. Now, maybe at the end of the year, they'll put me away, But if they do, it's going to be in a nice place. I'm going to tell you, I will have everything there. I'll get manicured, I'll have massages, I'll have everything. It'll be one of those places that will make them feel that they regretted the day they sent me away.
Welcome! Hey, Arthur.
So, Di, what are you thinking?
Dad, I want you to come home. You can't live like this.
Honey, come on. There's an omelet bar. I gotta tell you, the man throws a great party.
I think that they see a regular guy in me, and she's a pretty girl, but I think they can see why we're together sometimes. I think that they see that we get along and we do fit.
That's the hardest thing you can't really make that happen. You've just got to get lucky. And I think people fundamentally believe that, Doug and Carrie are a real married couple, that you can buy that and watch them relate to each other and it doesn't feel false.
The big thing that everybody always said was, well, how's a guy like that going to get a girl like that? I don't buy it. But I think if you watch the show and, if you really watch it and you enjoy it, I think you forget about that. And that's, when that goes aside because forgetting the fact that there are people out there, heavier guys, not the, leading man type that get pretty women in this in this world, and it happens a lot. I've seen it. I know. But besides that, I think you get even the people who didn't buy that in the beginning. We hope that they get beyond it and say, well, you know what? After a while, you just get lost in this couple, and you go, I do believe that they should be together, and you feel that they are, and you believe it.
Wait. Top half of a movie is all you need. What the hell does that mean?
It means nothing. It means nothing. We haven't had sex in a month, so if you want to talk, let's talk after.
Yeah, if I'm still awake, baby.
I think, we do have chemistry, me and Kevin, we do. I don't know why we do, but we do. We're very honest with each other, and I think that honesty maybe comes across, and I think people see that. I mean, people see BS, and they don't BS when they're watching it, so I think America sees that there is a real, genuine love between us, and also because the writers and Kevin have done a great job of taking something that is universal in any relationship and make that funny, in the 22-minute format that they have to do it.
I have to say I have to give a lot of credit to Everybody Loves Raymond, Phil Rosenthal and Ray Romano on that show, because what they paved the way for, I think, on CBS and in general, was that you could show a married couple in a domestic situation without over-idealizing it, where the couple was so lovey-dovey and there was no conflict to speak of, or if there was conflict, it was a very special episode. Whereas here, just the little conflicts that come and go within the course of a day. And so I wanted to do that with this show, but I can't claim to be the architect of that idea, but it seemed to be the right idea for this show.
Okay, enough. Could you just come sit over here?
I want to stay here. I like it. I got a new seat.
I say that the character of Doug is, we're exactly the same, except the character of Doug is 4 pounds heavier. That's how I look at it. That's what I've always based it on. So in the off season, I can, I go wherever I got to go, but I know what weight I got to be at when I come in to play Doug. Now, Doug is me. Doug is pretty much, it's me reading lines, basically. I'm not going into any deep character, place to play him, which is nice because it's simple and you can just kind of react like you would react. Might be a little dumber than I am, I hope. Maybe not, which frightens me.
Did you feel that? Oh, no. Oh, honey.
It's a Doug Queen! Oh, boy! Quick, under a door jam! Under a door jam! Find one!
Stop it! I look at Carrie and I go, in many aspects, Carrie's much nicer than me. In many aspects, I go, she's too forgiving. Because I am spicy. Spicy. Not in a good way. you know, where I'm biting. You know, I guess I'm learning that about myself, that I really am offensive to people.
Do you have any idea why that girl didn't want to go out with you tonight? No. Because you act like a schmuck. Now, I'm taking a gamble that maybe, just maybe, deep down underneath, you're not a schmuck. So starting now, you're gonna act normal. Now, if you slip up once, I'm gone. Do you understand? Good. Albert, look at my eyes, not at my chest. Good.
You know when you have an idea of yourself, like, inside I know I'm charming and sweet, but that just doesn't come out. The more I talk to people, the more they go, oh, she's tough, or, you know how you are, Leah, or like, I go, seriously? Like, you know, if 10 people say you're drunk, sit down, you know what I mean? So now I'm starting to go, I think I'm a bitch, I think I am.
Hey, I know what'll put a smile on your face. How about I go splash those people at that bus stop?
Well, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna have to speed up.
Question for you. Now that your wife's sister moved in, the two of them ever, you know, get into an argument and maybe start whacking each other with pillows? Next thing you know, a little playful wrestling leads to a lingering kiss. I'm asking.
You know, I've always been, you know, a big fan of New York growing up there, and you know, I think the people from New York really appreciate the show, and you know, the surrounding areas and stuff. So you know, it's great. All across the country do. You know, we don't just limit our humor to New York, obviously, but you know, we just try to, you know, feed these people with stuff that they can relate to.
Sometimes they use words in the show that A, we don't understand, and B, we don't know how to pronounce, and C, we would never say anyway. So like that's kind of like what we bring. We go, oh, we would never say. Well, I can't even think of a word right now to think. Like, well, I know one time they wanted us to say marionette, right? And both Kevin's like, well, I'm not gonna say marionette, and I go, yeah, that's stupid. Say marionette. And I go, what is it? He goes, I don't know. Do you? I go, no. So it's like things like that. We would just say puppet. We wouldn't say, you know, but that's not all we bring. I mean, obviously, the writers, most of us are from the East Coast anyway, you know. But I mean, I've been here longer now than I was in New York, and for some reason my accent gets thicker and thicker the longer I'm in California. I think that's just my way of like going, I'm not from here.
My manager and I constantly talk over how many hurdles we had to jump, you know, to get to the place we are, and it's just such a nice feeling, and it's a nice, you know, to get a pilot on the air, and then, you know, to make it, and then to get picked up for 6, and then picked up for 3, you know, and then you go, oh, I hope they pick us up for next year, you know. And it's a great feeling. It's a, you know, it's a nice pat on the back to be able to be doing this for 5 years. Gosh, and it's still rolling, and it's a lot of fun, and I still love it. You know, that's the main thing. I feel like these past 5 years have gone by like that because I haven't had a job. It's been a place I've wanted to go.
I've lost track. I mean, if you're doing a show, you don't count. If you're having fun, you don't count. You know, it's like having fun.
I mean, the first thing you do is when you come out on stage, you're like, oh my God, there's 250 people here. You know, they actually came and stood on line, and that's flattering, you know, and then you see them clapping and smiling, and just, you know, you kind of see who their favorites are by the cheers. You know, Kevin and I always notice what a big cheer Jerry gets, and much bigger than ours. But that being said, we're still flattered that they actually stood on line, because they really do have to stand there for 2 hours, and then they have to remain here for another 4 hours. So it's kind of brutal.
I think doing something in front of an audience is in its own right, you know, really a great form, because you know, that energy that the audience ideally becomes part of the show, and the energy and the actors feed off the energy.
It's the same thing in stand-up. When you do one joke and get a big laugh on it, you're more confident for your next joke. As if, you know, but if it went the other way, where you didn't get it, you know, you may hold back on that next joke and pull back on it a little bit because you don't believe in it. And getting a big laugh from a studio audience like that is amazing, you know. And if it didn't work, we just sweeten it.
Good for you. Maybe you'll, what is it? I'm sorry, give me a lead in. I don't know what I'm saying.
When a joke doesn't work like we planned, we try to beat it. We'll do second takes all the time, second, third takes, of just for fun too sometimes. to try to beat the joke that, you know, even if it got a big laugh, we'll say, let's take it a different way and try. And a lot of times it doesn't, and then other times, just because it's, you know, new to the audience, they'll laugh even more and it works better. Or, you know, a lot of the stuff, we got a lot of talented writers that will be just on the set and just think of things right on the spot and, you know, bring it to me and, you know, or Leah or whatever, and we'll just throw it out there and, you know, it works a lot of the time. A lot of the jokes that you see are second takes and stuff that was just written right there.
He comes up with different one-liners at the end of each scene. Sometimes they rewrite it on the spot, or Kevin will just think of something in the scene, which I can't do. I have to know exactly what I'm saying, exactly. I can't, and don't veer off the thing, and if you look that way, then I'm going to forget what I have to... Whereas Kevin can just think and just do it, you know. Many times I crack up, but they just cut, you know, and the camera's not often on me anyway, so I don't really have to worry about that. I was hoping our director was here so I can hear that.
Charlie, Charlie, take one. All 4 cameras. Marker.
Set. Action. I want cheesesteaks.
Should I get the car?
A very important episode in the series for me was Cello Goodbye. It was interesting because the whole thing began with Kevin and I and David Litt were in the writer's room, I think when we were doing the pilot, and somehow kind of started doing this bit, well, not intended for the show, that involved 2 people were having a really violent argument, but in a situation where they couldn't make any noise at all. So basically where they would just yell at each other without making any sound.
It was a scene actually that Michael came up with and we loved so much. It was, we were in an opera and I didn't want to be there. And it was just a silent argument that we had to have, and it was really getting exaggerated, you know, between myself and Leah. And we just loved yelling, you know, just going nuts at each other without making a lot of sound, and the people around, obviously, and just getting so physical within that little tight spot where you have to be, you know, so quiet. It was just such a fun scene to do, and that's all we really had. Michael just had that idea of that, and that was it. So we had to build a story around that. How can we get them to the opera and do that? You know, and that's maybe not the way you should do a story. You should just kind of lay it out and just find funny things within that. But in this case, we found the funny thing and built the whole story around it, and it came out great. I really loved it. I like Closer to Home, but if it can go over the top in a real way, I love that. I love that. I enjoy doing that. I've always loved physical comedians, so I watch them, and I love to be able to do it. And if it comes from a grounded place and you can believe it, you know, then I'm all for it. I want to do it. Again.
Well, the one I just did with Anne, my wife, who played Patton Oswalt's mom, you know, Veronica, and that was something that really kind of exploded for me in some very, I don't know, we weren't no longer acting, we were just performing off of each other. It was almost bringing back our own stuff we did in our act, and she was very, she was aggressive enough to knock me down, you see. I had to now reach up and try to, see, this is the first time I've ever been bounced. And she could bounce. And so I guess we're free to get together anytime we want, huh?
No need to go sneaking around now.
Nope, not at all.
Well, so long.
See ya. And I did one with Ben and William Hurt a couple of weeks back, well, toward the end of the last season maybe, in which I was the kid and Ben played my father and Bill Hurt was a psychologist who was trying to understand why Arthur was going through this need to be aggressive and scream. And that was a very interesting episode because it brought me back with Bill, who I worked with in Hurly Burly on Broadway, and Ben, who I've done a few things with.
I really enjoyed last season we did an emotional show where Carrie and Doug tried to have a baby, and then at the end of the season I ended up losing the baby. And the reason why I liked the show, not because it was like, you know, a sad, I had, you know, a minute to shed a tear and show the Academy, you know, look, I can cry too, you know, but it was, I love that even Kevin as an actor was asked to stretch a little bit, and I was asked to stretch a little bit, and then there we were kind of stretching in front of each other and a little embarrassed that we were showing this kind of emotion to each other. So it was weird because it was like that's where we kind of really started to trust each other just as people, because we did have to show that side of it. So that was a special episode to me.
Hey, baby, you want to rumble?
What makes the show unique or not so unique to me is that we're not a shiny show. We're not a very, it's a very simple show. It's a simplistic show. It's basically, you look at the Honeymooners type of show, which I loved. And what made that show so great is, I mean, there was, it was the couple, the chemistry of the characters.
I just think we had a very fortunate combination of elements. And it's hard to, you could talk about it forever, but it's hard to really, ultimately it's an intangible thing. There's just something there that comes out of the screen at you.
I'm proud that we're just a very simple family show. There's not much to us. It's just, a guy, his wife, and his father-in-law that lives with him, comes to live with him, and his buddies, and that's it.
Books are more my milieu.
Okay, one more word in French out of you, I'm gonna have to kick your ass.
Touche.
That's it.
Keeping the stories fresh, even going into season 6, I'm amazed actually at how much it does still feel fresh.
It's hard because, after 125 episodes, it gets difficult to come up with fresh ideas. But, if you dig long enough, you find little nuances between the couple and little stories that you can, and people, the writers find this in their own lives and come in each, summer we meet and go over stuff that happened to them. And
what happens is we have 2 months off between the end of one season and the beginning of the next, and we all get to, for really the first time in a year, go out and live some life and go places and do things and socialize. And inevitably you have things happen that are just a little funny or weird, and we all come back saying, oh, well, this happened, that happened, and just the little minutiae of life.
This season we hope to continue, doing what we've been doing, and really, really obviously hit some new areas that we haven't hit before and have some fun. I love doing physical stuff, so, the more physical, the better. I'm always looking forward to doing some crazy stuff. And, just keep having fun with the show, and hopefully people, enjoy watching it and continue to watch it because we enjoy doing it. And as long as that mix is there, we'll continue with the show.
You are so dead. You are so dead.